The women in the scriptures are commonly remembered for their great faith or maybe their scandalous backgrounds, some for their remarkable wisdom, their admirable devotion, their noble convictions, or even their great courage. But the woman whose story we will learn about today will go down in history as a fearless assassin. Yeah, I said it. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Anybody know who I'm talking about? Anybody? Drop it in the chat. Who is the fearless assassin? The biblical texts that mention her describe her as a wife, as a tent-dwelling woman, and a couple of times as the most blessed of women. Her great exploit on behalf of God and the people of Israel is described in the book of, let's see, some have guessed Hannah, Esther, Phoebe. Who else do we have? Those are some great guesses, but the woman that I'm speaking about, her story is described in the book of Judges, chapters 4 and 5. In fact, two remarkable women are described in Judges 4 and 5. Deborah the judge, the prophet, the mother over Israel, the commander-in-chief, the warrior, the one who people came to have their disputes settled. We know Deborah. We know that woman. She was a boss. Any of you know this type of woman? A boss, a brave, bold, bad woman? That was Deborah. But Deborah actually literally writes and sings the song in honor and tribute of another woman. Yes, somebody dropped it in the chat. A sister leader, a foreign woman actually, an ordinary woman likely underestimated in her time. And her name was Jael. Yes, a few of you are getting it. I think I see Minister White, Minister Hooper. Yes, Jael. The prophetess Deborah draws attention to this other woman. She recognizes the critical contributions of Jael and she praises her. She honors her. She writes a song about her. How fabulous is it when we can honor one another for our accomplishments? Regardless of gender or across gender lines, it doesn't matter. It's okay to give people their props. Can somebody say it's okay? It's okay to give people their props. And in Judges 4 and especially chapter 5, Deborah gives Jael her props. Let me give you some background to the story. Let me just set the scene for you. Because of the sinfulness of the people of Israel, God allowed them to be oppressed. In this instance, by the king of Canaan. The commander of that king's army was named Sisera. Now, this army had 900 chariots, which was a pretty well advanced form of warfare at the time to have those chariots. And they cruelly oppressed the people for 20 years. After crying out to God with a contrite heart, God raised up and spoke through a woman named Deborah. And he told Deborah that they were to fight Sisera and his army and that the Lord would give certain victory. But to borrow a lyric from one of my favorite plays, the people of Israel were outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, and outplanned. The commander of Deborah's army was afraid because of that. He was unbelieving about the victory, and he was unwilling to move forward with the order he had been given. Leaders out there, have you ever been in a circumstance with someone on your team and your team member was afraid and unbelieving, so much so that they were paralyzed? Has anyone ever experienced this? You hear God speaking, this is the way. But he respected her enough to say, if you go, I'll go with you. And so that's what happened. They go into battle. They raise up fighters from among the tribes of Israel. And God does give them victory. But Deborah told Barak, who was the commander of her army, because of how you are going about this, not following the command, the order, and leading the way that God said, the Lord is going to give the ultimate victory to a woman. These chapters, Judges 4 and 5, juxtapose supposed male-female strength and weakness issues. They play on the societal norms around gender expectations. Lots of scholars, Hebrew scholars, feminist scholars, womanist scholars have written about this. And if I had a Bible study forum here, we would go into it. But just know that as we're reading the text and Deborah says God's going to give the victory to a woman, we're led to believe that Deborah is probably going to be the woman. But in fact, it is Jael who wins this victory. The story goes on to tell us that they went out. Barak did show courage in going along with Deborah and the army, and they get a certain amount of victory because of God's being with them. But Sisera, the leader, gets away. He comes to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, and he thinks he's going to be safe there because her husband's people and the king of Canaan's people were on good terms. He thought he was safe. He thought he was safe because the societal custom said a man would not enter into a woman's tent. And Jael was so very freely allowing him to come in and take refuge in her space. Give it up for Jael, who was a quick thinker. In Judges chapter 5, this is what Deborah writes. She says, in the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, and in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned and travelers kept to the byways. She puts Jael and Shamgar on the same equal footing. And Shamgar was a fearless fighter who killed hundreds of Philistines. Then she goes on in Judges chapter 5, verses 24 to 30 to say, most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, of tent-dwelling women, most blessed. He asked her, talking about Sisera, he asked her for water and she gave him milk. She brought him curds in a noble's bowl. She sent her hand to the tent peg and her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. Between her feet he sank. He fell. He lay still. Between her feet he sank. He fell. Where he sank, there he fell. Dead. I love the way it's worded. Like he's so good and dead because of Jael's quick thinking. It goes on in verses 28 to 30 to talk about the perspective of Sisera's family, trying to figure out why the valiant warrior Sisera hasn't come home yet. And the princesses say to the mother, well, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why does he tarry? Probably because he is dividing the spoil, a womb or two for every man. In other words, it was Sisera and his army's practice in warfare to sexually assault the women as part of their victory in warfare. It makes the story all the more pointed that this woman, this foreign woman, this woman that he undoubtedly thought he was superior to, is the one that eventually takes him out. She decisively joins the efforts of Deborah, of Barak, and of the fighters among the tribes of Israel by killing Sisera. In other words, Jael was a team player, hashtag team player. Come on, sometimes we have team players, we don't even know they're on our team till a crisis arises and they stand up. Amen, somebody. She was a team player. Herman Edwards, a witty coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, he's long gone now, but he gave this commentary to a reporter about teamwork. He said, the players that play on this football team will play for the name on the side of the helmet, not the name on the back of the jersey. Can I say that again? They play for the name on the side of the helmet, not the name on the back of the jersey. In other words, it wasn't about Jael, it was about what God wanted to do. Jael was the surprise leader, this woman with no title, with no military experience, with no battle training, with no orders, with no instructions, assassinates Sisera. She uses an ordinary object, something she's familiar with because the women used to put up the tents. She uses a tent peg and a mallet. She's got no weapons, no sling, no sword, no spear, no chariot, no armor, but she uses what she has to get the job done for God. This is a reminder to us that God uses who God wills. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Men and women can do extraordinary things. So let's give God the glory for this unsung hero, heroine in the scriptures, Jael. God bless you.